The sheriff tightened the handcuffs around Daniel Carter's wrists as his 7-year-old daughter stood beside the patrol car, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Daniel had been kneeling in the dirt outside a small-town grocery store, his hands raised, trying to explain that he had done nothing wrong. But the sheriff had already made up his mind. In front of a crowd of strangers, Daniel was treated like a dangerous criminal while his little daughter, Emma, watched the father she trusted more than anyone in the world being taken away. What nobody in that parking lot knew was that the quiet, exhausted single father in the faded work jacket was not who the sheriff thought he was. And one phone call, made only minutes later, would expose a truth powerful enough to change everything. Before we continue, if you believe kindness matters, that people deserve second chances, and that we should never judge someone by their appearance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to SoulTales for more emotional stories about kindness, family, and unexpected second chances. Daniel had spent the last 6 years raising Emma alone. After losing his wife to an illness, he had quietly rebuilt their life one difficult day at a time. He worked long hours repairing electrical systems at a local manufacturing plant, packed Emma's lunches before sunrise, helped her with homework at the kitchen table, and never let her see how often he worried about money. Their apartment was small, their furniture was old, and Daniel drove a 12-year-old pickup truck that made strange noises every time he turned the key. But Emma never complained. To her, her father was everything. He was the man who checked under her bed when she was scared, the man who stayed awake beside her when she had a fever, and the man who always found a way to make pancakes on Sunday mornings even when there was barely enough food left in the refrigerator. That afternoon, Daniel had taken Emma to the grocery store after picking her up from school. He had counted the money in his wallet twice before entering. They needed milk, bread, medicine for Emma's cough, and a few basic groceries to get them through the week. At the checkout, Daniel noticed a wallet lying near the customer service counter. It was thick, filled with cash and several expensive cards. Without hesitation, he picked it up and handed it to the cashier, asking her to keep it somewhere safe until the owner returned. Daniel had no idea that a security camera had captured the moment from a distance, making it appear as though he had taken the wallet from a woman's purse. Minutes later, a man rushed into the store claiming his mother's wallet was missing. The store manager checked the camera footage, but the angle was poor. The sheriff, Marcus Reed, happened to be nearby and arrived within minutes. Daniel tried explaining what had happened, but the situation became more complicated when the wallet's owner claimed that several $100s were missing. Daniel immediately offered to let them search him and his truck. Nothing was found. Still, the sheriff looked at Daniel's worn clothes, his old truck, and the frightened child standing beside him, and suspicion hardened into judgment. Emma clung to her father's jacket as Sheriff Reed placed the handcuffs around his wrists. Daniel's heart broke when he saw the fear in his daughter's eyes. He knew he could fight the accusation later, but in that moment, all he cared about was keeping Emma from believing that her father had done something wrong. He lowered himself as much as the handcuffs allowed and tried to calm her with a gentle smile, even though his own eyes were filled with tears. Emma kept asking why they were taking Daddy away, and Daniel could only promise her that everything would be okay. The sheriff led Daniel toward the patrol car while people watched. Some whispered. Some stared. One person even raised a phone to record the scene. Daniel felt humiliated, but he refused to become angry. He knew Emma was watching. He did not want her to remember her father shouting or losing control. Instead, he kept telling her to be brave and trust that the truth would eventually come out. Then, just as Sheriff Reed reached for the car door, his radio crackled. A dispatcher asked him to step away from the vehicle and take an urgent call. Reed frowned, walked several feet away, and answered his phone. What happened next changed the entire atmosphere. The voice on the other end belonged to the county attorney. He told Sheriff Reed that the wallet case had just taken an unexpected turn. The owner had contacted the store again after realizing that the missing cash had never been inside the wallet. She had accidentally left the money in her own car. More importantly, the security footage had been reviewed by an investigator who noticed Daniel picking up the wallet and immediately turning it in. The footage clearly showed that he had never taken anything. Sheriff Reed stared at Daniel through the patrol car window. But the county attorney was not finished. He had discovered something else while checking Daniel's identification. The quiet single father they had just handcuffed was actually Daniel Carter, a former federal security consultant who had spent years protecting government infrastructure before walking away from that life after his wife became sick. Daniel had once been trusted with sensitive facilities and had received several national commendations for preventing security breaches. After his wife died, he rejected offers to return to high-level work because he wanted to raise Emma himself. The sheriff's face changed completely. Daniel was released almost immediately. The handcuffs came off, but the emotional damage of those few minutes could not simply disappear. Sheriff Reed approached him with an apology, admitting that he had judged Daniel too quickly. Daniel listened quietly. He could have embarrassed the sheriff in front of everyone. He could have demanded punishment. Instead, he looked at Emma, then back at Reed, and said that the most important thing was making sure no other child ever had to watch their parent being treated like a criminal without evidence. Those words stayed with Sheriff Reed. But the story did not end there. The county attorney later asked Daniel if he would consider helping the sheriff's department improve its training on handling accusations, evidence, and interactions with children during arrests. Daniel initially hesitated. He wanted a quiet life. Yet he remembered Emma's frightened face in that parking lot, and he realized that perhaps his experience could prevent another family from suffering the same humiliation. Over the following months, Daniel began helping local officers understand how quickly assumptions could turn into injustice. He taught them to slow down, examine evidence, and remember that every person they stopped had a story they might not know. Sheriff Reed became one of his strongest supporters. Their relationship changed from suspicion to respect, and eventually to genuine friendship. Emma also changed. She had once been afraid whenever she saw a police car. But Sheriff Reed made a special effort to rebuild her trust. He attended one of her school events, helped her plant a tree at the community center, and eventually became someone she no longer feared. Daniel watched quietly from a distance, grateful that one painful afternoon had somehow created an opportunity for something better. Months later, the grocery store manager invited Daniel and Emma back for a small community event honoring people who had demonstrated honesty and kindness. Daniel was asked to speak. He stood in front of the same parking lot where he had once been handcuffed, looked at Emma standing in the front row, and said that character was not proven by expensive clothes, powerful names, or impressive bank accounts. Character was proven in the small moments when nobody was watching. Daniel never told the crowd that he had once been a highly respected federal security consultant. He never mentioned the awards he had received or the powerful people who knew his name. To him, those things no longer mattered. What mattered was that Emma had learned something far more valuable. Doing the right thing does not guarantee that everyone will understand you immediately, but it is still worth doing. As the event ended, Sheriff Reed approached Daniel and quietly thanked him for giving him a second chance. Daniel smiled and told him that everyone deserves the opportunity to become better than the worst mistake they have ever made. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to SoulTales. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a reminder that goodness still matters, even when the world gets it wrong. And before we end, I want you to leave one special comment: I will choose kindness before judgment. Let those words be a reminder that we never truly know what another person is carrying behind a tired face, old clothes, or a difficult day. Because sometimes, the person standing in front of us is not the person we think they are. Sometimes the quiet father everyone overlooks is carrying a lifetime of courage. Sometimes one terrible misunderstanding can become the beginning of a second chance. And sometimes, the greatest proof of who we really are is not what happens when people respect us, but what we choose to do when they don't. Daniel walked away from that grocery store that day holding Emma's hand. He had lost his dignity for a few painful minutes, but he had gained something far more important, the chance to show his daughter that truth does not need to shout to survive. It only needs someone brave enough to keep standing until the truth is finally heard.